Hey everyone. Last month, the webinar for foster and adoptive families did not take place. So I thought I would just go ahead and record the presentation so you guys can have that. And after viewing it, please let me know if you have any questions or comments or want more information and more clarity. So we're going to talk about um, the role that fear plays in our foster and adopted children's behavior. And we'll talk a little bit about how we as parents can provide um, a safe and secure feeling environment for our kids. So, if you watched the first webinar, you know that we talked a little bit about how our nervous systems are always checking out our environment to see if we're safe. And the nervous system asks questions like, am I safe? Is this dangerous? Is this life threatening? And I had called this our Day 6 1.0 animal instincts. But I also said that because God created this nervous system for us, this survival system, because God created it, it's good. It's Tov. So the fancy name for this built-in survival system is called um, neuroception. Neuroception. This is how we all unconsciously judge whether situations or people are safe, they're dangerous, life-threatening. Now, when our foster and adopted kids have experienced chronic stress or when they have differences in their brain function, this neuroception can actually be not accurate. So let's talk about some risk factors that can impact how our kids think and trust and connect with others. Now, some of these risk factors will be obvious that they're going to create a higher risk for emotional problems in our kids and create a higher chance of our kids having maladaptive behaviors. But there's going to be a couple of them in this list of six um, that you may not have realized are risk factors. Okay, so some of the risk factors can show up in families where the parents um, were very, very attentive to their children. Okay, that you wouldn't necessarily think of in situations that our kids, our foster kids, or our adopted kids have maybe come from. Okay, so the first one is difficult pregnancy. Even small amounts of stress during pregnancy, it's been shown, it can negatively affect the baby's neurochemistry. Other risk factors during pregnancy would be substance abuse during the pregnancy, alcohol use, domestic violence, homelessness, lack of prenatal care, lack of optimal nutrients, a very, very stressful environment. The next one is difficult birth. So this would be birth complications, emergency C-sections, premature birth, lack of oxygen for any amount of time for the baby. The next one is early hospitalization. So kids that have spent time in the NICU, this can adversely affect them as they grow. They're going to receive unpredictable touch. They're going to receive painful touch from medical equipment. They're going to have less time with their mother, and that results in less attachment opportunities like holding and rocking and singing and that eye contact, touch, that kind of thing. And then the next one is abuse. Um, this, abuse sends a message to the child. It says, I don't like you. Abuse can be emotional, verbal, it could be physical, sexual. Children that have come from abusive backgrounds, they're Their systems are always going to be on guard. They're going to be hyper vigilant to the environment around them. And then there's neglect. So neglect sends the message to the child, you don't exist. And this includes failure to meet the child's physical needs and also emotional needs. And it's these children that come from neglectful backgrounds that often suffer the most severe behavioral problems and have the most developmental deficits. Then the last one's trauma. So the thing about trauma, that can be any event where the child believes that there's a risk of injury or death, either to themselves or to others around them, and where they feel an extreme fear and helplessness about that situation. Now, fortunately, God made our brains where they can heal even if a child has experienced one or more of these developmental factors. So the brain is what's called plastic, and that means it stretches and it adapts to the situations that the child faces. Responses to these environments are wired within their brain, but they're changeable to suit the needs of that specific situation. Okay? Now, this is the good news. This is good for survival. Children develop behaviors to help them cope in their early environment, right? But the same behaviors that help them survive when they were under the stresses, they can become maladaptive, no longer work, when the child is now in your home and they're actually safe. Okay? So when they're safe, they don't need those behaviors for survival. But their brain is still wired to feel that way. So thankfully, the brain remains plastic, moldable throughout our whole life. And this moldability allows our brain to still adapt to new situations. So what this means for your child is that with help, he or she can heal and can learn to feel safe in your home. So researchers are getting a handle on this big problem that are facing our foster and adopted children. Fear. Fear is a huge, huge issue for many children coming from trauma and neglect and abuse backgrounds where their needs weren't met in consistent, nurturing ways in their early life. So science is unraveling the mystery of the neurobiology of fear, and science is beginning to understand our body's amazing fight, flight, and freeze response that were designed to survive these traumatic events. Researchers can show now that when children have lived with chronic stress in their life, or when they have differences in their brain function, their neuroception can be inaccurate. There's that word again. So with sustained danger, but no one to help them, children eventually believe that they're alone in the world without anyone to meet their needs. And so they develop survival skills instead of trusting others to care for them. So their nervous system is telling them that they're in danger, but there actually is no real danger. And these children will continue to use those fear-based survival strategies that they learned before they even came into your home, even though now they're living in a stable and caring home. Okay? So your foster or adopted daughter won't feel safe, even though she is safe. She'll still react to situations in ways that are inappropriate or extreme. So it's important to learn how to recognize your child's trauma-based needs that are born out of fear, and then learn how to promote what we call felt safety in your home so that you can disarm the core fear issues that are kind of driving those survival behaviors. Yes, it's a huge task to dive into a child's deeply ingrained fear responses. But it's a necessary one in order for our children to heal. Now, the first step in helping your child heal from fear is for you to tackle fear head on with the Father. For you to tackle your fear head on with the Father. You know, fear is a funny thing. It sticks its ugly head in places where it doesn't belong. And if you're parenting a fearful child, but you feel stuck at helping them heal, chances are fear has a hold on you too in some area. And this is an ailment that's common to all of us. Science is getting a handle on the problem, but what we really need is a connection with the solution. So remember something. Remember that our loving Father is ready to take hold of your hand when you extend it to Him in order to help you with your own fear. You know, it's only in connection with Him, clinging to Him, that fear will dissolve in your life. And that's when you receive the authority from Him to cast out fear in your child's life. Now, before we end this today, I'm going to give you some ways to create an environment of felt safety for your child to help them deal with their fear. But first, you and I need to walk in fearlessness ourselves by taking hold of our own safety source. So ask yourself, what do you do when you fear God, but not in that awe, reverence kind of way, but because you're afraid to reveal yourself to Him? Do you fear His rejection when you mess up? Are you back in the garden after eating from the tree, trying to hide your sins from God and yourself? Yeah, me too. Let Him help you with your fears. Here's an interesting thing that the ancient sages talk about. They say that children, and this includes our foster and adopted kids, children are God's mirror for what's going on in us. So are you parenting a fearful child? Are you a fearful child? Now I'm going to give you 5 verses that show true power behind overcoming fear that you can talk to the Father about and ask Him to take away your fear. And I'll make sure to post these verses so you have them, the references and all of that. So God wants your child set free of fear, and He wants you set free of fear even more than you want this. So what I'd like for you to do is to turn each verse into a heartfelt prayer to the Father. And then thank Him for His safety and His security in your life. Now, it may seem kind of strange to do that at first if you're not used to doing so, but thank Him that your child's fear and all that comes with that is going to be used by God to help you with yours. And then you help them with theirs. What's there to be thankful for amidst all those big behaviors that children have because they're living in their fear brain? Well, one thing to be thankful for is that your precious, fearful child maybe is what prompts you to deal with fear in your own life. Maybe that situation will prompt and is prompting you to seek God on this if you haven't already, or to continue seeking Him if you started. Anything that turns us back to God in prayer and thankfulness is a good thing in our lives. So here are the verses. One is in Isaiah 41:10. I'm going to just read it. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. Yes, I will uphold you with the right hand of my righteousness. The next one is Psalm 27:1. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Next one is 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and a sound mind. And then John 14:27. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give unto you. Not as the world gives, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. And number 5 comes from 1 John 4:18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has torment. He that fears is not made perfect in love. Now, it is not an easy task to lay our fears at the feet of the Lord. Most of the time we just forget to do it. I spent many years not doing that. And then because it was such a habit not to, when I realized the importance of it and the need for it, it was hard to get into the habit of take it to God, take it to God, take it to God. The rich rewards are ours when we do. 2 Chronicles 16:9 says, For the eyes of the Lord move to and fro throughout the earth, that he may strongly support those whose heart is completely his. Now, the word in there, completely his, that is, in Hebrew, it's shalem. And you might notice this already. It sounds like shalom. It comes from the same root as our word shalom. Shalem is an adjective, and it means whole or complete, but it also signifies a kind of well-being, such as security and contentment and sound health and prosperity and peace and tranquility of heart and of mind. God longs to show himself strong, to protect those who trust in him, and trust in him by actually demonstrating that we bring him into our fearful parts of our life. And isn't that the heart's cry of every good parent toward their child, that they respond in love to our words? That's what our Father wants. Hebrews 4:12-13 says, For the word of God is living and active and sharper than any two-edged sword, and piercing as far as the division of soul and spirit, joints and marrow, able to judge the thoughts and intentions of the heart. And there's no creature hidden from his sight, but all things are open and laid bare to the eyes of him with whom we have to do. So what's the practical step in doing this? It's setting aside time every day in prayer to let the Father into those deepest places of fear in you. Ask him to root out the fear, because a lot of times what we're feeling is up here, and underneath it is fear. We may not realize. Sometimes our angry responses are really fear. And then tell him that you're willing for him to transform your own fear into a loving trust for him. And it's at that point then that you will be in a position of authority to guide your child through their fears. So this lack of feeling safe is one of the major reasons that kids misbehave. Okay, so I promised you some strategies that you can use to create more felt safety for your children. So let me give you some. First one is just to be attuned to your child. Now, oftentimes there's things in our lives that distract us from truly being there for our kids, right? You can be in the same room with them, but not really there. You know how it feels when you're talking with a friend or an acquaintance and they're there, but they're not, you can just tell they're not really there, right? So be attuned to your child. Find out what's distracting you from being that way there with your child, and then prayerfully lay aside those distractions. When your child needs you to focus on them, be all there for them. This gives them a feeling of safety. One way to show this is to match your body language to theirs. So you turn your body straight onto theirs, right? You get down on their level, right? If standing up and they're shorter than you, if that might feel threatening to them, you get down on their level. Pay attention to nonverbal signs that your child is not feeling safe, so that you can kind of help them before there's a full-blown meltdown. So some signs would be like a clenched jaw, clenched fists, unnaturally large or unnaturally small pupils, a reddened face, eyes glazed over. Notice if certain sights or smells or textures are bothersome to your child. And then pay attention to transitions, moving from one activity to another. This can, interestingly enough, be fearful for some children. So you pay attention to their body language. The next one I call name it. Well, I didn't come up with it, but name it to tame it. So it's unlikely that your child's just going to come out and say, I'm not feeling safe in this moment. Instead, they're going to be having a temper tantrum. So you're going to need to kind of narrate what you're seeing, right? They may not even be aware that all of a sudden they've slipped into survival mode. So when you talk about this with your child, you can assure them that it's normal for them to have these little bodies that are always on high alert, and you can help them to not feel shame for when these survival instincts sort of take over. Because believe me, our kids don't want to be this way. They're most likely very confused about how they can be going along and having a great moment, and then all of a sudden they've triggered by something and they're now deep into their survival brain. So when we can explain this to our children in a way that they understand, it really does help take that shame away from them just reacting, their body reacting the way that it was designed to do. You want to validate their emotions. Help them name their feelings, because they may not know how. Now, you may not understand where these feelings are coming from with them, but you don't have to understand. What is important is for you to validate their emotions. A lot of situations will feel traumatic and register as traumatic for our kids because they have triggered a body memory that's kind of lying behind and under their conscious level. So it's like subconscious. The next one is give voice. Be willing to hear your child out, even if you don't agree to what they're saying or what they're saying makes you uncomfortable. Now, you can offer appropriate control without giving up all of your parental control. You can actually give them some simple choices to help them feel empowered. When children are fearful, they don't feel empowered. They feel helpless, right? So many times our children that have come from these hard places, they didn't have any control over their environments. And their environments were very scary places. So whenever possible, offer choices or allow your child to ask for a compromise. Like, Hey, honey, would you like to wear your blue shirt today or your green shirt? Would you like to hold my hand while we walk or walk beside me? We all feel more safe when we feel like we're in control. So this is all part of giving voice. The next one is to stay playful in all your interactions with your children, even when you're disciplining. Now, playfulness is like a muscle. It can get stronger, but it can also kind of waste away. Now, for me, the more stressed I am, the less likely I want to be playful, because playfulness is not my particular nature. For some of you, being playful is going to be super easy. My thought would be do more, bring that playfulness into discipline even. For those of you like me, practice those playful muscles. Being playful helps keep a situation from escalating by keeping that nervous system open. So when our nervous system shuts, that's when the survival mode kicks in, right? So a simple example would be kind of a mouthy child, you know. Mouthiness kind of tends to be triggering for a lot of us parents. So we might, our knee-jerk reaction might be, do not speak to me that way. A more playful approach would be, hey, are you asking or are you telling? So the next one is be curious. Be curious about these big behaviors that our kids are having. What is the need behind the behavior? Most parents will jump to conclusions about our kids, and most of the time we do assume the worst. So when you can be curious about their behavior, that can help you not take their behavior personally when they overreact to us. Remember, it could be, the reason for their big behavior could be their highly sensitive survival system that's alerting them to a danger that's not really there. Always ask the father to intervene in these situations when you're in doubt on what's going on with your child. That's the other thing I didn't do near enough of with my children. I truly, truly believe that God wants to be in all aspects of our lives, and that includes our parenting. The next one's be consistent. The unknown for any of us can feel scary, especially for our kids who have come from hard beginnings where unknown and trauma goes hand in hand. Our kids need to see that we are stable and predictable. And then the last one is less talking. When our children are in their survival brain, and I think I mentioned this in the last webinar, when they're working in their survival brain, their thinking shuts down. Their auditory processing shuts down. They want to, but they can't really pay attention to us anymore. So the solution, you speak simply and you repeat yourself. When children are feeling unsafe, their body is going to be on high alert, right? So that thinking brain goes offline. Just know that they can't process things verbally. They're not going to be able to process the things that you're trying to say to them. So use fewer words and lighten their load, their mental load. That gives them less to have to keep up with, because inside what's going on with their body when they're in survival mode is their regulatory system, which is, God's regulatory system, is trying to bring them to calm, trying to bring them to balance, right? And so when we expect and ask too much of them, that's just too much for them to have to process, okay? So when you talk to them, also keep it concrete. Children with brain differences, they usually struggle with abstract concepts, no matter what, but especially when you are noticing that your child suddenly is all of a sudden is not feeling safe. Now, I would be happy to go into each of these different points into greater detail with you all. Um, so, feel free to contact me at the Rooted Cafe, and I'd be happy to talk about each of these more, because there's more detailed things that you can do within each of these points that I mentioned. But I just kind of wanted to give you some categories to get you started. If nothing else, just to assure you that it is possible for us to bring a greater sense of felt safety to our children. Where they are right now can seem frightening for us, can seem scary, and it can seem, the question is, will they ever get better? Will they ever trust me? And do know that even within those short categories I gave you, there's a lot that can be done to help our children to experience the truth that they're safe now. Fear is such a big thing that stands in the way of healthy relationships between parent and child, siblings, this kind of relationship, or relationship with God. Fear gets in the way a lot. Disarming fear, it does take time. This isn't a quick fix. This is a lifelong pursuit. But that's okay, because in doing this, in allowing God into these situations, He's going to make inroads that you wouldn't think are possible. When He's in it, when you invite Him into scary things, into fearful things, He's going to be there. Fear in general, this is just an area that we all can use more prayer about and more heart-to-heart conversations with God about, right? So that's what I have about this class on felt safety. The biggest takeaway that I would maybe want to give you, each of you will have your own takeaway, but the biggest one I want to give you is that our children are a mirror for us. And where we see even with foster and adopted children, our Father has given them to us. And yes, their experiences had nothing, early life experiences had nothing to do with us, but fear is, we all are fearful about some things. And we can look at our children and how we want to heal them. We can look at the fear in their lives, and as we look for ways to create more felt safety in them, let's not neglect ourselves either, and see that their fear is a mirror for the fears that we have. And just I'm excited to hear from you all as you take this to the Lord. I'm excited to hear your stories of how He's intervening, how He is providing felt safety for us. Because as our parent, His environment is one of all of those things that I listed, all of those techniques. That's what He does for us. And when we, as we try to provide that environment for our children, let's be on the lookout for how God does that for us, because He's been doing that. He's been calling to us this whole time and saying, "Fear not, fear not." So yeah, that's what I have. Thank you all for listening.